The political landscape today is riddled with contradictions, where promises of security are often undermined by policy shifts that fail to address the needs of those most vulnerable. The recent changes to the state pension and blue badge schemes in the UK provide a stark illustration of this phenomenon. These are not just bureaucratic adjustments, they are lifelines for millions of pensioners and individuals with disabilities, and the government's handling of these reforms speaks volumes about its priorities. While these changes may have been framed as necessary, the reality is that they will likely deepen the divide between the government's rhetoric and the lived experiences of those it purports to serve. The politics behind these reforms reveal a troubling trend, one that favors austerity and cost-cutting over genuine support for the most marginalized groups in society. The increase in the state pension, touted as a triumph for pensioners, does little to disguise the fact that it falls far short of meeting the growing cost of living. A rise of £460 per year, touted as a success under the triple lock system, is nothing more than a fig leaf for a much larger issue. Inflation has long since eroded the purchasing power of pensions, and this adjustment will not keep pace. Rising food prices, escalating energy bills, and an ever-increasing council tax burden are pressures that pensioners cannot simply brush off. This is not a sustainable solution. It is a half-hearted gesture aimed at quelling discontent without addressing the root cause of the financial hardship that so many retirees face. How is it that in the wealthiest country in the world, our pensioners are subjected to the indignity of wondering if they will have enough money to cover basic necessities? This inadequacy is compounded by the government's ongoing obsession with austerity measures, which now threatens the stability of the triple lock system itself. Why are we, as a society, questioning whether we should keep a promise made to those who have spent their entire lives contributing to the national economy? The triple lock is not just a policy, it is a moral contract, a recognition of the debt we owe to our senior citizens. To dismantle it is to abandon the very principles of fairness and decency that any government should strive to uphold. When the state's response to pensioners' needs is to provide a pittance and then question whether that pittance is even sustainable, we must ask ourselves, what does this say about our values? Are we so determined to maintain a veneer of fiscal responsibility that we are willing to sacrifice the welfare of those who have already paid their dues? Equally disconcerting are the reforms to the Blue Badge scheme, which, instead of improving mobility access, risk exacerbating the challenges faced by people with disabilities. The tightening of eligibility criteria under the guise of preventing fraud is nothing more than an attempt to impose stricter controls on a system already fraught with bureaucracy. Disability is a complex, often invisible condition, and the new medical assessments and mobility tests impose burdens on people who may already face significant challenges in accessing care or support. These changes will make it harder for many people who genuinely need a blue badge to qualify, creating barriers where there should be none. Moreover, the crackdown on blue badge misuse, while valid in principle, has been executed in a way that unfairly targets those who rely on the badge to live independently. The increased scrutiny of applications and the higher penalties for misuse are necessary steps in the fight against fraud, but they should not come at the expense of legitimate users. The failure to balance this crackdown with clearer guidance and better support for those struggling to comply with the new rules is a grave oversight. The government has shown little understanding of the realities faced by those who rely on blue badges for their daily lives, further alienating a group that is already among the most marginalized in society. If we are truly committed to an inclusive society, we must ensure that access to essential services, such as parking privileges for those with mobility issues, is not only available but also straightforward to obtain. The move towards digital-only applications for blue badge renewals is another deeply flawed decision. Forcing elderly and disabled individuals to navigate online systems without adequate support is not only exclusionary but discriminatory. Not every pensioner or disabled person is tech-savvy, and expecting them to comply with digital-only processes without offering alternatives is a reckless policy that disregards the needs of a significant portion of the population. The introduction of digital systems should be accompanied by robust measures to support those who cannot access them, not a blanket refusal to engage with non-digital applicants. And let's not even begin to discuss the growing trend of councils charging for parking in spaces designated for blue badge holders. These changes are an affront to the very idea of providing reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. How can it be justified to charge individuals who already face financial and physical challenges for the privilege of parking close to their destinations? This is not just an inconvenience, it is a burden that could discourage people from going out, from participating in public life, or from receiving the care they need. It is a policy that punishes people for their disabilities, and it must be rejected outright. In the face of these troubling reforms, it is essential that we confront the uncomfortable truth. The government's priorities are not aligned with the needs of those most in need. The rhetoric of support for pensioners and people with disabilities rings hollow when it is followed by policies that leave these groups struggling to make ends meet. It is time for a fundamental shift in the way we approach social welfare. We must stop pandering to austerity and start investing in the well-being of our citizens, particularly the most vulnerable. The question is not whether we can afford to provide adequate support. It is whether we are willing to make the moral commitment to do so. The answer must be yes, because the alternative is a society that abandons its most vulnerable citizens, and that is a future none of us should accept.